The first snow arrived earlier than expected. Most villagers noticed it because of the cold. The village elder noticed it because of a thread. It hung between two fence posts outside a small cottage near the edge of the marsh. Every roof carried frost. Every cart carried frost. Every fence carried frost. The thread did not. The elder stepped closer. The wool moved in the wind. He touched it. The thread felt warm. Not hot, not magical, simply warmer than it should have been. Several villagers gathered behind him. Nobody understood what they were seeing. When the elder asked who had spun the thread, one woman answered, "Elswyth." Some villagers laughed. They knew Elswyth. She lived beyond the fields with her father and two brothers. She spent more time among sheep than among people. She rarely attended gatherings. She rarely spoke during village meetings. Most people considered her strange. The elder did not. He looked at the thread once more. Then he said, "Bring her to me." The following morning, Elswyth stood before the elder's table. The hall was cold. Firewood had become scarce. Several nearby woodlands had already been cut heavily over the years. Families complained about rising prices. Everyone feared the winter ahead. The elder placed the thread on the table. "You spun this?" "Yes." "Why is it warm?" Elswyth hesitated. Then she answered, "Because I changed how the wool holds air, the room became silent." Several men exchanged doubtful looks. One nearly laughed. The elder remained patient. "Explain." Elswyth picked up the thread. "Most people spin wool for strength." She twisted the strand between her fingers. "I spin it for warmth." Few understood what she meant. Yet the elder listened. He had survived enough winters to know that unusual ideas often arrived before important changes. Years earlier, when Elswyth was still a child, her mother had taught her to spin. Their family owned little land. The soil near the marsh produced weak harvests. Wool became their survival. Each evening, Elswyth sat beside the fire and worked with fleece. Over time, she noticed details that others ignored. Some fibers trapped warmth better than others. Some twists held more air. Some combinations remained comfortable even during damp weather. While other children played, she experimented. Small changes, tiny observations, years of patience. Nobody paid attention. Not until the winter, when firewood became scarce. That year, many villages reduced their fires. Families slept in colder rooms. Children developed coughs. Older villagers worried constantly. Meanwhile, Elswyth began sewing thick wool panels inside her cottage. She layered them differently than anyone else. She created pockets that trapped air. The walls felt warmer. The room stayed comfortable longer after the fire died. Her brothers noticed first. Then, her father. Soon, neighbors began hearing rumors. People claimed she possessed unusual wool. Others claimed she knew forgotten secrets. Neither story was true. Her secret was observation. The elder asked her to demonstrate. Over several days, she showed villagers how she sorted fleece, how she twisted thread, how she arranged layers. Many people ignored her. Some mocked her. A blacksmith named Garin laughed openly. "If warmth came from thread," he said, "we would all heat our homes with blankets." Others agreed. The elder said nothing. Winter would decide who was correct. As temperatures dropped, conditions worsened, roads froze, trade slowed, wood prices climbed again. Several families burned furniture, others searched hedges for dry branches. The village became anxious. Meanwhile, Elswyth continued working. She taught her brothers. She repaired old garments. She reinforced walls. She built thick curtains from layered wool. Every piece served a purpose. People still laughed. Until the first major storm arrived. The storm lasted 3 days. Snow-buried paths, wind-rattled shutters, several cottages struggled to remain warm. When the storm finally passed, villagers visited one another to assess damage. Many homes felt bitterly cold. Elswyth's cottage felt different, not luxurious, not hot, simply stable. The warmth remained. Word spread quickly. Some villagers became curious. Others became jealous. A merchant named Roderick saw opportunity. He traveled between settlements buying wool and selling cloth. When he heard stories about Elswyth, he became interested. Not because he cared about warmth, because he cared about profit. Roderick visited her cottage. He offered silver in exchange for her methods. Elswyth refused. The merchant increased his offer. She refused again. Finally, he left. But he did not abandon the idea. Weeks later, he hired workers to observe her. They watched deliveries. They watched sheep. They watched spinning. Yet they learned little, because the true secret was not a single action. It was years of knowledge. Knowledge cannot be stolen by watching for a day. Winter continued. Temperatures dropped further. One evening, a widow named Brenna arrived at Elswyth's door. Her grandson was sick. Their cottage remained cold. They lacked firewood. Elswyth visited immediately. She inspected the home. Gaps surrounded windows. Drafts entered through loose boards. Heat escaped everywhere. For 2 days she worked. She used spare wool, old cloth. Simple repairs, nothing expensive, nothing complicated. When finished, the cottage held warmth far longer than before. The improvement seemed small. For Brenna's family, it changed everything. More villagers arrived. At first, there were only a few. Then, dozens. The elder organized gatherings where Elswyth explained her techniques. Some listened carefully. Others struggled to believe something so simple could matter. Yet results became difficult to ignore. Families who followed her advice burned less wood. Rooms remained warmer. Children slept better. The village began changing. Not dramatically. Gradually, one household at a time. Roderick watched with frustration. He wanted exclusive control over the idea. Instead, it spread freely. He attempted another strategy. He purchased large quantities of wool from nearby settlements. Then he raised prices. He hoped villagers would become dependent on him. The plan nearly worked. Wool became harder to obtain. Costs increased. Many families worried. When the elder learned what was happening, he called a meeting. Roderick defended himself. "It is business," the elder answered calmly. "Perhaps." Then he announced a communal wool exchange. Families contributed fleece, spinners, shared labor, resources remained local. Roderick lost influence immediately. The villagers supported the plan. For the first time, Elswyth found herself speaking before large groups. She disliked attention. Yet people needed guidance, so she continued. One evening, the harshest storm of the season appeared. Snow fell endlessly. Wind screamed across the fields. Travel became impossible. During the night, a roof collapsed near the center of the village. Neighbors rushed through deep snow. The family escaped safely. But their home became uninhabitable. The elder opened communal buildings for shelter. Elswyth arrived carrying blankets. Not ordinary blankets, layered wool blankets made using her methods. People noticed something immediately. They remained warm even in crowded halls. The difference mattered. Days passed. The storm refused to end. Food supplies became a concern. Firewood dwindled. Anxiety returned. The elder organized work crews. Some cleared snow, others repaired structures. Everyone contributed. Elswyth joined whenever possible. Despite exhaustion, she continued spinning at night, not for profit, for necessity. By midwinter, the village looked different than it had months earlier. Homes were better insulated. Families cooperated more frequently. Knowledge spread between neighbors. The improvements did not eliminate hardship. They reduced it. That mattered. One afternoon, Garin the blacksmith visited Elswyth. Months earlier, he had mocked her openly. Now he removed his hat and apologized. "My house stays warmer because of your advice," Elswyth nodded. "That is enough," the blacksmith smiled. Then he offered help repairing equipment for shepherds. Small changes created larger ones. Trust followed results. Meanwhile, Roderick remained determined. He traveled to neighboring villages claiming he had invented the techniques himself. For a time, people believed him. Then, travelers arrived. They spoke with residents. Stories spread. Eventually, the truth became known. Roderick's reputation suffered. Trust once lost proved difficult to recover. As winter approached its coldest weeks, another challenge appeared. A sickness spread through nearby settlements. Nothing catastrophic, yet enough to worry everyone. Cold conditions worsened recovery. The elder again encouraged villagers to improve warmth wherever possible. This time, people listened immediately. No debate, no ridicule. The value of preparation had already been proven. Several families volunteered to help older residents. Others repaired damaged walls. Young workers delivered supplies. The village functioned more effectively than before. Not because people had become wealthy, because they had become connected. One night, Elswyth sat beside the fire with her father. Snow drifted outside. The room remained warm. Her father watched her spin. "You know," he said, "your mother would have liked this." Elswyth remained silent for a moment. "She taught me everything." "No," her father replied. "She taught you where to begin." The word stayed with her. For years, she had focused on small observations. Now she realized those observations had become something larger. Not invention, not genius. Accumulated patience. The winter eventually began to weaken. Days grew slightly longer. Snow melted from southern slopes. Travel resumed. Merchants returned. Among them came visitors curious about the village. Many wanted to learn about the unusual spinning methods. The elder welcomed them. Elswyth taught whoever wished to learn. Some expected hidden secrets, complicated formulas, rare materials. Instead, they discovered practical techniques, careful work, attention to detail. Most were surprised. A few became disappointed. People often expect important changes to come from dramatic discoveries. Reality is usually quieter. Months later, neighboring settlements reported improvements. Families saved firewood. Homes remained more comfortable. Knowledge continued spreading. Elswyth never sought recognition. Yet recognition arrived anyway. Travelers carried stories. Not all were accurate. Some exaggerated. Some invented details. Others claimed magic. The villagers corrected them whenever possible. The truth remained simple. A spinner noticed what others ignored. That was enough. Spring finally arrived. Streams thawed. Fields softened. Animals returned to pasture. The village gathered for a celebration. The elder addressed the crowd. He spoke about winter, about cooperation, about preparation. Then he turned toward Elswyth. She showed us that solutions often appear before people are willing to see them. The crowd applauded. Elswyth felt uncomfortable with attention, yet she understood the moment belonged to everyone. No single person had survived winter alone. The lessons continued over the following years. New cottages incorporated better insulation. Spinners shared techniques freely. Children learned practical skills earlier. The village became known for resilience. Visitors often asked where it began. Some pointed toward the elder, others toward the communal exchanges. Most eventually pointed toward a single strand of wool hanging between two fence posts. The thread itself did not change the village. The question it created did. Why was it warm? That question led people toward observation. Observation led toward improvement. Improvement led toward trust. And trust carried them through difficult winters. Years later, the elder passed away. The village mourned. A new leader took his place. Many traditions changed over time. One tradition remained. Each winter, a strand of wool was stretched between two fence posts near the center of the village. Not as a symbol of magic, not as a symbol of wealth, as a reminder. Important changes rarely announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they begin with a detail most people overlook. Sometimes they begin with a person others underestimate. Sometimes they begin with a simple question asked at the right moment. The children who grew up hearing the story eventually taught it to their own families. The details shifted slightly with every telling. That always happens. Yet the heart of the story survived. Pay attention. Learn patiently. Share what works. Those lessons remained useful long after the harsh winter became memory. Many years after Elswyth first stood before the elder's table, a traveler arrived and asked why the village prospered despite difficult land and difficult weather. An old shepherd answered, "We learn to notice small things before they become important things." The traveler looked confused. The shepherd simply pointed toward the strand of wool hanging nearby. The traveler touched it. The wool felt ordinary, because by then the secret was no longer hidden. Everyone understood it. That was the final difference. Knowledge shared widely becomes stronger than knowledge guarded closely. Elswyth's greatest contribution was not warmer thread. It was her willingness to teach. And because she taught, the village remained prepared long after she was gone. The marsh still flooded occasionally. Winters still arrived. Storms still tested every household. Hardship never disappeared completely. Life rarely works that way. Yet each generation inherited better tools than the last. That legacy proved more valuable than silver, land, or praise. The story endured because it reflected something true. Most transformations begin quietly. They grow through effort. They survive through cooperation. And they last because ordinary people choose to pass them forward. Long after names fade, useful knowledge remains. That is how a spinner changed a village. Not through power, not through wealth, through patience, observation, and a decision to share what she learned.